Thank you guys for letting us come back out here again. My name's Matt. Just kind of quick little housekeeping items, and just so you guys understand, we'll talk about why there's essentially two different companies here today. Grid Technologies, what I'm a part of with the way to think about it is essentially we are the hardware and networking folks, and the crew over here is they do web development and software. That's, we kind of think of technology as kind of one big sphere. There's actually a bunch of different segments that kind of go into it today. So, like she said, I was here last year. We had to talk about cybersecurity in the construction industry, just the types of threats that are happening. If you're curious, or if you were here last year and you want to, look at that again, we did record that session, like we're also recording here today, so you guys can definitely do that at a later time. The goal here today is really just give you guys a ton of value. This is really for you guys. We really appreciate the partnership with this organization. And what we want to do is not just let this be a death by PowerPoint type of thing. So we really appreciate any type of questions throughout the presentation. If there's something that's of interest and you guys want to talk about this a little bit more, please do so. We want this to be engaging. And we had that last year and it was great. We talked, had a lot of candid conversations as we were going through the presentation. We will allow enough time at the end to kind of dive into some specific things, and of course, after the fact, if you have anything afterwards and you're curious, as we go through the rest of this year, definitely reach out to both of us. So, that being said, I'll start. We're going to start off with Bob, and I'll let him introduce. Actually, let me do this real quick. I did forget one slide actually. So just a little bit about us. Real quick, and I'll introduce Bob. Yeah. So as far as Grid Technologies, like I said, we're the networking and hardware folks. Basically, we provide what's called managed services. So we become the IT department for small to mid-sized businesses. We also have co-managed type of solutions where we work with internal IT. Large organizations, it's really common for them to have, they need to have an internal IT person. And we work with them through outsourcing, like different project work, security, solutions, things of that matter. So, and just as far as our size, we're 38 people strong right now. We've been growing pretty rapidly over the last 5 years. We serve about 90 different companies across the state of Michigan. We have 2 locations, Clinton Township and also Grand Rapids. And we're here to really make IT systems work for the folks that hire us on. So we've been doing a really good job with that, and I decided this year it'd be great to incorporate one of our strategic partners, which is Spark, and because you'll see is that there's a point at which you can take your IT infrastructure to a point to where it's really benefiting you, keeping you guys profitable and keep things moving, and there is a point to where you can really start being strategic with technology, and that's where these guys come in the software development side. So with that, I'll hand it over to Bob and we'll get started.
Cool. All right, thanks, Matt.
Yep.
So 3 technology guys, none of us brought a clicker, so it just kind of figures. So we'll be looking down at clicking, so I apologize for that. And I do think this convention is awesome. I looked at the agenda. I thought we were going to be coming to a place with all these sessions and everything. And I look at what you guys are doing. This awesome. Session. They're getting the business stuff out of the way. Let's go have fun. So bear with us, and hopefully we can make it a little fun. And then let's have the conversation. Definitely don't want to just hear 3 tech guys ramble on about stuff. So if you have a question or something, just pop your hand up. Stop me. We can go from there. So Spark Business Works, like Matt said, we're a web design and custom software firm. We're out of Kalamazoo, our headquarters. We also have locations in Grand Rapids and Houston, Texas. We were originally part of CSM Group, so the construction management firm. I'm sure some of you have been on a job or 2 from that group. I was their CIO for many years, had a software group. We started to help subs and help other firms in the industry, and we became kind of construction technology experts, and we've branched away. We're completely separate from that organization, but that's where we were born. So we understand, we've been in job sites and we've been in boardrooms. So we understand the challenges there, and we've helped lots of construction firms with that. And a lot of that's custom software. It's how you use data, but not just not at a super complicated level. It's how do you use it and get better performance in the field, or how do you get more integration with back office in the field instead of so it's not super complicated stuff. We call it practical innovation. So you might hear us say that a few times. It's how do you invest some money and get an ROI out of technology? And we partner with Grit quite a lot because they also take a similar approach. You want to learn about your business, why you do it, where you're going, and how does technology enable you to do that. And that's kind of the differentiator that we see with Grit as well. Okay, so how is technology in construction changing? Look at this. Beautiful.
Let's go.
It's really just a fire.
There we go. It's a fire. Get that security taken care of.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Oh,
Yeah, all right.
Wow, that's gonna be.
We'll all
I'm
hit the wrong
fired.
button at least twice. So bear with us. So we've been doing this for almost 10 years in construction, and we've seen a lot of changes. And I'm going to kind of be at the macro level, and then the other guys will talk a little more details. This is funding for construction tech. So Contech, everyone knows, what that means. Construction technology, the industry of that they call Contech. This is the investment over the last 10 years or so, and it's skyrocketing, right? So there's a ton of money being dumped into construction technology, and it can be pretty overwhelming. This is a list of, this was from this year, there's 3,500 startup companies focused on construction technology, right? So this is starting on the coast, and all that stuff's getting kind of forced into the Midwest, right? And we focus at Spark primarily on privately held middle market firms. So we're really trying to figure out why are all these companies trying to build technology, and they're just going to try to get you to adopt it. And this is what's the big overwhelm, is that a lot of you have probably done this. You have a dozen different technology tools, one for bidding, one for cost management, time entry, scheduling. You get all these different tools, and then it's like, how do all those connect? And how do you actually leverage them? Because a lot of them do great things in different areas. And so this is kind of a graphic that shows just some of the different areas. And it can be extremely overwhelming when you're just trying to run your jobs, trying to be more profitable and keep things going. This is what they're chasing. Okay, so all these companies are being created, and this software and all this technology innovation is created to basically profit off of this window right here. So I'm sure most of you are familiar that they always say construction has been kind of a laggard in the industry, and they haven't seen the productivity growth that other industries like manufacturing has seen, and their different the different years that the decades of the productivity increasing in manufacturing and other things. So construction has been the laggard, and so they're dumping all this money into software and innovation, thinking that's going to just make everyone in this room more productive, right? But we know that's not the case, right? Construction is not like every other industry. It's not like you can build a piece of software like a legal firm would use, and they make all the attorneys use the same tool, and everything's fine, because most of those law firms are the same. Construction tech firms are not the same. So we have clients in the same industry, same market, same type of work, and they run their businesses completely different. They couldn't use each other's software, because it's how you guys do the work that keeps you going. You have different project mixes, a lot of regional relationships. The environments are tough. It's cold, it's hot, it's dusty, it's wet, and then the users are tough. I'm sure everyone here has some of those users that don't want to just adopt the next technology thing. Anyone know anyone like
They
that?
can't remember their password.
Right.
Yeah. It's my password for my email.
Yeah. So at Spark, what we see this macro investment into construction technology, into what we believe most firms aren't going to use. And I'm sure some of you have adopted software, then got it to the field and been like, oh, the guys won't use it, or hey, it doesn't do things exactly what we want. The sales guy told us one thing, right? So that's what's going on, and I think at the macro level. And what I want to kind of communicate is don't freak out and get overwhelmed by this. There will be a lot of consolidation over time, but that's what's happening at the macro level. So you've got all these challenges. Sorry, I'm looking up there. Despite all this, you still have to run your daily business, right? Data security is important. streamlining your systems, finding waste and removing it from your processes. And so you're kind of in this tough situation. A lot of firms are turning to technology, but if you've waited a while, don't feel too overwhelmed or like you've missed the boat. It's actually kind of a benefit. So a lot of this stuff is getting a lot less expensive than it was 5 or 10 years ago. It's getting more customized. So there's a big opportunity for firms in your industry to start kind of taking a step back and making good decisions on what's next. So where do you start? We've come up with the approach that it starts, and you've got business in our name, Smart Business Works. And what we've seen in rolling technology out is it's not about that tool. It's about the team in the field adopting it. It's about the back office adopting stuff. And so it's not necessarily about the technology. We start with your business. Where are you going? Why do customers choose you? How do you operate? And that's actually the most important piece to focus on. So it's not about the latest app you can download in 5 seconds and start doing something. It's more of a business foundation. And the team will talk about that today. We came up with this pyramid. I don't know if we've trademarked this or copyrighted this, but this is basically the approach that we help construction firms take when they're deciding on their technology roadmap. It starts with business continuity and security. So this is like, hey, let's make sure your foundation in your company from a technology standpoint is locked in place and you've got a great foundation to build on, right? The next one is competitive advantage. So why do your customers choose you right now? Each of you have a different reason. Making sure the technology that you're adopting and investing in is securing that competitive advantage, right? So if your customers choose you because you're relationship based and you pick up the phone all the time, maybe you shouldn't adopt technology that forces your customers through some type of CRM tool, right? That's just a simple example. Or hey, we're the low cost provider, we win work because we're low cost. Well, don't install technology that's gonna inflate your costs, right? Simple stuff. At that point, that gets your technology to embrace where you're at right now and why customers choose you. The next one is your future differentiator. So where are you trying to go in the next 5 years? And why do you want customers to choose you then? Invest in that kind of technology next. And then that future wow state is like where you really want to go. 15 years, that's the big, hairy, audacious goal. So we found that if you structure your technology investments with that kind of mindset, it'll position you to outperform your peers. So that's the approach. These guys are going to talk more about some of the detail. That bottom piece of the pyramid is really the grit side. Got to make sure your stuff is locked in. So I'll let him talk about that. I feel like I went really fast. I've done that for a lot. So any questions at this point before I hand it over to Matt? Nothing?
Kind of scary. You got a Jimmy Fallon look about you.
Really?
What's that?
Jimmy Fallon look about you. I saw you kept looking at me. Any other questions?
Just,
or
you
comments?
said middle market.
Yes.
That's your target. Could you define that?
Yeah, so
Because
basically.
everyone has a different.
Yep, so privately held,
market.
privately held Midwestern-based firms, typically 50 to
200.
200. We like to work in that zone because you're typically dealing with owner operators or a management team that's empowered, and so we see and it's a lot more fun, I think, in those markets. Great. Any other questions? We have some big clients, like up here, Team Elmer's is a client, but then we've got we have clients that are 5, 10 people. So great, awesome, thanks.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, so, and just to clarify too, we actually work in the same market as well. And that's why we work so good together, because we're targeting that middle market as well. So, it helps to have partners that understand the types of clients that we're working with. So as you look at that pyramid, where it starts is really your business continuity, disaster recovery planning. And you're probably wondering, well, what that is. And basically what it is with your organization is that you should at least start the process of having a plan in place that if something was to happen to the business, it's about how do you keep business operations going if there was an event of some sort of crisis involved. And that could be anything from a physical disaster of some type, fire to the building, flood, power outage, pandemic. We would've thought we would have had that in our vocabulary, just a few years ago. And ultimately, this plan encompasses IT as well, and IT is just one part of the overall business continuity plan. But really what we want to look at is really starting with a disaster recovery plan. And where you want to start with that is really looking at planning a process to where you ultimately can look at all the potential risks across the board when it comes to your technology. So looking at all of the different endpoints. When I say endpoint, I'm talking things like your computers, your servers, your switching, the firewall that's in your business, all of that, and looking at ways of how you potentially can recover, how you're going to manage that, how the operation is going to continually go if there's some type of issue that happens in there. Ultimately, what's your resilience to these types of threats and things that are coming into the organization? When I say threats, I'm talking things like, hardware failure to cybersecurity issues and everything within that spectrum. And then out of that, you're going to build policies and procedures around that to ensure that you're going to have a continual improvement business model as you move forward. So really what the process looks like in all these different areas, and we'll kind of get down to this a little bit more, is looking at your overall IT risk management is basically you're going to start with identifying what those potential risks are. You're going to look at it and assess what those risks are and how that's going to impact. You're going to look at what controls you can put into place to control those risks, and then obviously review those controls and then start the process over. This isn't a one-time set and done type of scenario. This is a continual process improvement, and as you know, technology is always rapidly changing. So the processes and the things we put in place are going to have to adapt and change as well. I would love that we could just pick this up one time and be done, and we have it good for 10 years and come back, but that's just unfortunately not the world that we live in anymore. It's, as you know, there's many things constantly changing as we move in technology. So having a continual process of risk assessment is really where you really want to start. And to really, to kind of look at some of those issues and kind of bring some clarity on it is, what are some of the common IT issues that we see day in and day out that are plaguing not just construction, but all different types of businesses. Things like I mentioned before, your hardware failure, neglect and maintenance and updates and security patches. That's all kind of part of it. Those software vulnerabilities. If you're still running, Windows XP in here, you probably should update that. For many reasons. Insufficient backups and data loss. Cybersecurity issues is another big thing. We talked about that heavily last year when I was here. Even something as simple as compliance violations. We work with some municipalities in the construction industry as well that they can shut you down just because you're not following the certain regulations and compliance that you need to maintain for your data. The other part of that too is just slow down the responsive systems. If you've got switching and old cabling within the environment that has network latency and all of that, can be all add up to reduce productivity. Ultimately, that affects your bottom line and also affects the overall, I call it, just the motivation with all of your employees as well. So, where do you start in the business continuity chain of things? Do we look at cybersecurity? Do we look at just kind of like updating certain infrastructure? Do we just start updating like laptops and that type of stuff? Well, where you actually really want to start is you really want to start in looking at your backup and disaster recovery plan. You want to start looking at the actual backup strategy itself. And this includes everything when it comes to running an on-premise type of server, for example, or if you're even in the cloud. Some people make the misconception that if you're in the cloud, then everything's backed up. It's not necessarily true. There's things you need to look at in the overall backup and disaster recovery plan. And as we say, all roads all lead to the backup, because if something does happen where, say, the server did crash, or there was a ransomware attack, or some big data loss that happened at some point, everything goes right to the backup. That's the last thing that's going to protect your business from losing that important data. That's really going to keep you guys moving forward. So, what kind of goes into a disaster recovery plan or a DDR plan? What we really want to look at is something that encompasses kind of what's listed here. you basically want to look at implementing something that has basically what's known in the industry as the 3-2-1 backup rule. And basically what that is essentially it's 3 copies of your data that's going to be backed up over really 2 different types of medium. And then also another backup that's going to be off-site, preferably in some sort of cloud type of environment. So if anything happens at the physical location, you always have a way of getting that data back. This is a standard practice. This is something that if something was to happen, you have a really good chance of getting that data back, and you have ways to keep business operations moving forward. You also want to be looking at a backup solution, or you should be using a current solution, what's known as an image-based backup. There's also backups that are called file-based backups. I would encourage you to stay away from those. Basically what those are is you take, say, a photograph and you want to have that photograph backed up. A file-based backup actually compresses that data into a specific file format and then backs it up. And so if you ever need to retrieve that, you actually have to uncompress that data and then get it back to its original state. There's a lot of issues with the compression, a lot of failure, high failure with that. They tend to be a lot more cost effective, but what you want to do is you want to have basically a one-to-one copy or image-based backup with all of your data. That's part of there. Two key areas that I really would love everybody to take note of and focus on is what we call the RPO and the RTO when it comes to disaster recovery planning. The recovery point is basically how much data have we backed up over time, and basically what's your recovery point. In most cases, and what's acceptable for most organizations, they have like a 24-hour recovery point. So if something was to happen and they had a big failure of some type, say on the server end, they would only lose about a day's worth of data. So that's the recovery point objective that you want to incorporate. You have other objectives that are longer than that, and maybe more like a week. You have ones that are more like closer to an hour. It's just really a math problem with what's acceptable, and that's a conversation you guys need to have in your organization. The other part to that too is the recovery time objective when you come into your backup strategy. And what that is that once you understand, that you have your data available, and we can pull that data back either from the local source or from a cloud source, how fast can you get back up and running? How fast can we retrieve that data and get operational again? I go into organizations all the time. They're like, "Yep, we got a backup, and yeah, there's a cloud portion to it." I'm like, "Cool. What's your RTO?" They're like, they kind of get like a blank look in. I'm like, if that server that you guys have in your organization blows up and it's just inoperable, how fast can you get that going? And what they kind of forget is the procurement time to get a new server. It's not as simple as just going to Best Buy or Micro Center and getting a new server. Everything's custom built and built to order. It usually takes several weeks to get those types of components back in. So how are you going to maintain business operations as far as that business continuity plan to the interim? There's a lot of solutions in place now to where you can have basically an RTO as soon as 4 hours. So where you can actually continually run, or you can just have you switch over to basically another box and let's in line with the server, and you are able to get that data right back and are able to keep operations and keep making money. That's kind of the whole point of this, is how do you guys keep making money when a disaster hits when it comes to on-premise solutions? That's kind of the point of local virtualization, is where if you have the ability to where there's basically a clone of that server or a backup solution that's in line with that server to basically act as a temporary type of server for your data, that's really recommended. And then the last part, you see this nice little thing in cybersecurity called ransomware, malware. When it comes to overall business continuity disaster recovery, you really need to take that into account. We talked heavily again on ransomware last year, and the big thing with that is that the ransomware today specifically targets the backups first before it infects the rest of the organization. And the reason why they do that is because, again, all roads lead to the backup solution. And so if you don't have anything that's resilient to that, where it can be infected with that malware and those backups now are encrypted, and you need basically a key to get your data back, you really have no option at that point to you have to follow what the demands are for those attackers, unfortunately. So you want to look at some solutions that have some sort of resilience. And there's actually some really cool stuff today that has some artificial intelligence built into it as well, that looks for those unknown threats that we don't know about as of today, that can actually look at that and keep you guys moving forward, and that won't be necessarily an issue. So I'll keep moving on here. So you're probably thinking, okay, we're talking on-prem, well, what about the cloud solutions that are out there? Well, there's a lot of benefits to moving your infrastructure to the cloud, or moving your desktops to the cloud, moving, to software as a service, some of the stuff like with guys at Spark guys do. Because when it comes to business continuity and disaster recovery planning, it's almost automatic. As you move into those cloud environments, there's a lot of backup and disaster recovery planning that's already built in just by moving to those solutions, where it takes the ownership off of you and puts it onto those different types of cloud solutions and providers that are out there. The other part about moving, things to the cloud where it's appropriate, and I use that term appropriate because just moving to the cloud, on a whim might not be the best decision, especially if you're using programs and you have, people in engineering and large CAD files and that type of stuff. It might not make necessarily the best sense to just move everything to a cloud solution. You got to be careful about what you move to the cloud in that environment. But basically, one of the big things is that there's really not a big, huge capital investment. Especially when we were running stuff really on premise for many, many years, you really had to forecast and plan. What are you going to do with the server? A server, usually the lifespan is about 5 to 7 years. You had to, and they're not cheap, anywhere from $10,000, $20,000 to $50,000, the list goes up depending on how big an organization you are and what type of data that you have. So you really had to understand how many user account licenses you had, who's going to access it, what type of capabilities, how you're going to partition that space that's on the drives. When you move to the cloud, you have the complete freedom to grow and expand or decrease at any time you want. As long as you pay your monthly bill, you're going to have those resources available for you. So improved resource utilization is really a big thing to that. And the worst thing, back how we used to do things way back in the day, is we plan for another 5 years of growth in the business, and then you end up not using the half of the space or half of the resources because you just had to. Because once you upgraded that server, you had to really forecast. And so there's a lot of wasted money when it came to that type of solution. So moving to the cloud is really beneficial if you haven't already to do that. So enhanced collaboration and mobility, of course. You can get your data anywhere. Everybody's got tablets and laptops and all of that. You can communicate pretty much instantaneously now. The reduction in software licensing, the built-in security that's there. These are organizations like Microsoft and even some of the private cloud providers that are out there. You're leveraging their backup and disaster recovery solutions, and that's something that they got to maintain and keep current. So that's only to your benefit. And obviously, you always, as long as, again, if you're paying that monthly subscription bill, for your cloud solutions, you're always going to get the latest and greatest technology. It's not a race. You don't have to, to continually plan about how you're going to incorporate technology that's already built in. So, like I said, there's some caution, about moving to the cloud. One of the things that people do is they'll jump into the cloud and then they realize that that there are specifications that you need to really get the maximum performance when it comes to using those cloud technologies. And we see that a lot. We saw it a lot actually during when everybody had to work remotely in the COVID era, is that the technology that they had in place in the organization really didn't meet the demands when it came to using those cloud resources. It just couldn't keep up. So having a plan to maintain those pieces of hardware is going to be really important. And so having a proactive hardware management plan is really going to be beneficial. And this comes back to that risk assessment that I was talking about earlier. So having real-time inventory of your computers, is only going to benefit you because you understand, like you see in the example here, is you can see what's in the green, you can see what's in the yellow, you can see what's in the red. You understand that the life expectancy for most computers is anywhere from 3 to 5 years of age, for example. It doesn't make much sense as things deteriorate over time to try to keep using that piece of technology. So having the means to be able to see things in real time is going to be very beneficial, and a lot of organizations are starting to adapt this type of solution where you can literally within a couple clicks of the mouse be able to view all of those assets in real time. You can see what's in warranty, what's the current operating system that is on those types of devices, who has that device, which is really beneficial as we're so remote and working very mobile these days. and it gives you that 10,000 foot view as far as what is in your organization. So getting to the point where you can effectively have asset management planned out into your organization. So whether you're using an internal IT person or using a firm like Grit, having that resource available is going to be able to allow you to proactively plan and budget for those technology needs as things move forward. And this really reduces the amount of surprises as you continue to improve in your technology. And ultimately, it's going to reduce that downtime and productivity loss because we're not working on old hardware, just trying to keep up with the latest and greatest technology. So I kind of already talked about some of the benefits and the life cycle management. So really, cost optimization is really the kind of the big piece to that. So understanding, what's the recurring costs over time, understanding, what are those one-time costs, overall improved efficiency and productivity because nobody's, waiting, 20 minutes for the computer to start up. That's really a big component of that. People are staying, efficient. That's only going to be in benefit for the organization. Ultimately, it's going to allow you to make, better allow you to make just better, choices and better decision making on the type of technology that you're going to move forward with. It's going to allow, for scalability and growth of the organization. You're not confined to using just these certain pieces of technology over a period of time. You have the ability to be flexible and grow. And of course, when it comes to maintaining compliancy and overall risk management, having that, life cycle management is just going to really help you in those areas. And so what we do at Grit, and something that I would encourage anybody to start doing, is really starting basically an assessment or infrastructure maturity assessment to where you basically grade your network infrastructure. It could be on a scale of 1 to 5 as far as overall health. We like to use the color coding system. It's in the green, it's in the yellow, it's in the red. Of areas that need improvement upon. Obviously, if it's in the green, it's good. If it's yellow, it's something that probably something that is in compliance still. It's still good, but we need to make a plan for it in the next 1 to 3 years. Red means it's an immediate need, and we need to take some action on it. But basically, you want to assess all the areas of your physical security. So I'm talking about things like So you want to look at your actual physical security, things like your security cameras, door access controls, if you guys run video, any type of surveillance systems, that type of stuff. That's where you want to start, looking at as far as the physical security. Is your server, if you're running an on-prem server, is it next to the front door and there's no lock on the door? That's areas of concern of risk that you need to assess. Along with, looking at your actual network security. Is there any patches? Is there any open ports? That type of stuff that you need to look at and address. And then looking at your overall cybersecurity posture and IT policies that go with that. So, are you implementing things like this? Cybersecurity training? Are you guys looking at how users are accessing those computers? And do you guys have an acceptable use policy written where everybody has to sign on that? You guys have things like user administrative privilege, rights to everybody, which is problematic because they can make changes within the environment. The list goes on and on and on, as you can imagine. There's probably about 30 different points when it comes to this type of audit. And that's something that you can definitely do internally. It's something that we actually just do as part of the service of Grit, where we assess this on a recurring basis, and it's not just a yearly basis. We typically do about every quarter with most of our clients, to where we can really look at the overall business goals of the organization and making sure that their IT and their technology is going to be in line with what those objectives are. And again, it's all about maximizing the uptime of the organization and reducing that down. We want to keep you guys as profitable as we possibly can. Oops. There we go. And last kind of piece on that is kind of the cybersecurity defense. Couple things just on that. I'm not going to talk about heavily into cybersecurity because we talked about it really extensively last time I was here. But really having a good cybersecurity process in place where you have things like what's called managed detection and response. It's kind of new technology that's coming out. So where basically you have some sort of proactive threat detection in there, and this comes in the form of artificial intelligence across the organization. So basically nowadays, especially if you have a cyber liability policy, you want to, this is something that's kind of becoming more required that we're seeing over time. I think within the next 3 years especially, we're going to see a lot of organizations have to adapt this type of type of response. So managed detection and response, basically what it is that if there was some sort of threat, whether it be some sort of physical threat, something on the networking side, something on the cloud side, like your email, that type of stuff, basically having a solution in place, and there's different vendors that allow this type of technology in place, but basically it's going to look for any of those unknown threats that are coming in. If there's any type of manipulation that's coming into there, you basically, it's going to lock it down for you instantaneously in real time, to where it can isolate that incident and keep you guys up and running. So managed detection and response is part of the overall business continuity plan. Is something to really start considering and looking into. Again, I'm not going to talk heavily into that, but I just want to make a note of it for you guys to see. And just a little word on kind of the artificial intelligence side of things. Probably seen in the news and probably seen things like ChatGPT and all of that. We're looking at, with all of our clients, this is really a new thing for us, is how is artificial intelligence going to impact the business organization? So that's kind of the next thing. We talk about issues as far as cybersecurity incidences or physical threats, like fires or floods and stuff to the organization, or power outages, that type of stuff. What is AI going to do in the overall planning and business continuity and disaster recovery? It can be very beneficial. We're seeing that now. Where I use the example of ChatGPT, where I wish it was available 20 years ago in my teen years, where I could literally type in an essay on the Revolutionary War, and I'll have it written for me in less than 30 seconds. It's unbelievable what it can do. I know Jake's got some cool things with it here in a little bit as well to kind of talk about. But the benefits of AI and talking about cybersecurity is we've been using artificial intelligence for the business continuity disaster recovery planning for years now. It comes in the form of the MDR solution that I was just kind of talking about. But businesses are starting to use programs like this where it takes away a lot of the repetitive tasks, data entry, being able to come up with proposals, simple proposals. If you have a scope of work that you're giving to a client, you can literally create that proposal in less than 15 seconds, where it used to took you maybe hours or days to come up with that proposal. So we're seeing businesses really start to utilize this. And the point I want to bring up is we don't necessarily know where this is going. And I'm sorry to say, I wish I had an answer as far as what can we expect moving forward. And we basically want to provide just a word of caution that one is it's great to see what's happening on that end, but of course as soon as some new technology comes out, of course somebody wants to use it for their own personal gain, and we're seeing programs like ChatGPT be used to create things like custom malware with ability. People have the ability to basically create custom code that they had no experience prior, so they literally can create a Python script and be able to actually inject malware into an organization now faster than we've ever seen before. Creating actually sophisticated phishing emails where we're trying to get information from somebody in the organization. And actually I saw one the other day that looked like an actual correspondence between a CEO, a vendor, and a back and forth. And you could tell it was AI generated. It was just amazing to see that people are already using this stuff to make it look as realistic as possible to try to trick you in your organization. So just some things to be aware of on that end. So I kind of showed some examples there. So again, having as part of the overall disaster recovery plan and business continuity plan and preventing those things, and we look at the risk, what are some of the controls you can put into place? Again, having cybersecurity training. I'm not talking about a yearly training. I'm talking where you guys actually do have some sort of training at least on a quarterly basis with your organization, and actually one that actually gives you proactive, simulated phishing attempts to your users. So where you actually have, from your organization, you're trying to trick your own employees basically to click on stuff. So you have the visibility to see what people are clicking on, what types of threats, are they falling for, and so forth and so forth. Basically, again, we want to reduce the downtime. We want to reduce the errors in the organization, because ultimately the worst thing in the world that can happen is that somebody does inadvertently click on something or download something or correspond in a way, and that's going to be huge profit loss. Not only because there's a ransom involved or they wired $100,000 for some project. the worst thing that that happens in that situation is that you have a loss of reputation as well, because a lot of times they'll attack you and then they want to move forward to the next person that's in your email chain. A lot of times they'll be able to see things, who your relationships are, and it's a bad situation to be in when you have to tell your partners and stuff that, hey, I got hacked and here's how I got hacked, and you guys also need to be aware of the situation. So that being said, when it comes to disaster recovery, business continuity planning, that's really the foundational element of where you need to start when we're looking at how do we want to be competitive in this space and how do we want to incorporate technology for our benefit. And once we get people, at least in our organization with our clients, once we get people up to that level to where things are really running efficiently, running smoothly, the downtime of their network issues and stuff has been really resolved. It's funny is then we start hearing these conversations of okay, things are really running smoothly, we're making things happen. We have needs in marketing, we have needs, and we want to redevelop our website. We have this idea for this custom application, for that's client facing, and that's really where our services stop, and then that's where the relationship with Spark really comes into play. So with that ends my section on this, and I'll let Bob did if there's any questions on the business continuity disaster recovery side of things.
So going back to the AI piece, we have a lot of clients ask us, how can we use AI in our business? We typically respond with, first, build a defense against the negative AI things that are going to come to your business, especially in construction when you're dealing with large sums of money going back and forth. Does anybody watch 60 Minutes? Did you see the one on AI a few weeks ago? So hackers are able to use, I think it was 5 minutes of your video to get your voice and then call somebody with your voice. And so they would have their sons or daughters would call their parents, and it would sound like they were in distress. And so they can make our leadership team, we have a safe word. So if they get a request from me to wire money somewhere, we have a safe word that we use, right? So we always kind of say, hey, before you get on the offensive and start using ChatGPT for your proposals, get your defense in line first. We see it with HR, and we see a lot of fraudulent stuff going there. So anyway, that's kind of one thing we see in construction with a lot of the wire transfers and ACH and a lot of that stuff. I mean, you really gotta take a step back and really be on defense first.
Well, absolutely. So my section's really, and where grid is really this section right here on the pyramid. And the other way to think about it is just building a home or building a building. It really is the foundation that you need to start with. And if there's any cracks in that foundation, and you start implementing, some of the new stuff like what Spark's gonna be talking about here, or some of the new software that's out there, it can be very problematic for a variety of different reasons. And we really want to make sure you guys avoid that type of headache when it comes to your technology. So with that being said, we can start kind of moving forward into that competitive advantage, and I'll let Jake take that from here.
Thanks.
Yep.
It's perfect.
Alrighty. Thank you, Matt. Thanks, Bob. Glad we're getting the opportunity to share here on this, and appreciate you really sharing on that foundation, Matt. So I'm Jake. I'm our VP of Sales for our custom software side over at Spark Business Works, based out of Kalamazoo. So got the opportunity to come on up here. I was looking at your amazing calendar of events. Bob kind of called that out, and I heard a lot of you really excited about the golf event. But I thought you all came for the 3 technology guys at 8 a.m. on a Friday night. So here's what I'm going to do is the 2 folks that have the best questions, and I'm going to let Matt, you get to vote on that here, coming up here. 2 folks that have the best questions get socks from me that they can wear golfing, or if you're going to the women's spa events, that sounds pretty amazing. I don't know if you all had the balloon animals last night, but I heard that was there for the kids, so that's pretty cool. But here's the deal. We're here because we get to go and share on the next layer, that competitive advantage, what's beyond that business continuity, the security side. I love the tie-in from the AI perspective. I actually had one of those phishing incidents that Bob was mentioning about to one of my uncles. He texted me and said, Jake, did you reach out to me? and they were asking to wire money because I was in jail.
Yeah.
Thought it was my voice. It wasn't, so he didn't do it. But he said, hey, if you ever were in jail, I'll make sure that I wire the money. So the right times to innovate and digitize really come down to a few things. Okay, so this is the question we often get, like, when should I start? When should I start moving? Well, first off, the business continuity, the security, that bottom layer should be started now, or it should have been started already. You gotta take care of that piece. But the next layer up, it really comes down to a few things. There could be a major system change that you've had. So maybe there's a new ERP or accounting system that's in place. There's a change in leadership, so there's new thought process, new strategies, new big, hairy, audacious goals you're looking at over the next 15 years or 5 years. A thought leader is introduced, so maybe Matt was introduced this last year and cybersecurity was now a thought process. Now there's new thoughts and new ideas that are coming into play, and that's what we're hoping today is opening up, is what's the new things that we should be doing or thinking of that are going to bring us competitive advantage now in the marketplace, and being able to go and not only attract business, but attract talent. Because talent and the folks that are going to actually make sure the work is done, I know is a major challenge right now. And then seeking team feedback. So we'll talk on that, and I have a great tool that I'll give you by the end of the presentation that is a way to go and seek your team's feedback and really dig into what it is that they need. Because when you're going and building now competitive advantage technology and those types of things into your business, it really comes down to making sure that it's an experience that your team is going to use and they're going to adapt when they're out in the field. So I'm curious, is who trusts an outside perspective before you make a decision? Because I know I do. I go to Consumer Reports, I go to the Better Business Bureau, I look at Google reviews. I will not make a purchase on Amazon unless it's at a certain rating, and I then have a certain response that I'm seeing within the reviews. What this really comes down to is what's called social proof. You have to have a proof from other individuals to really feel that the idea is correct for you to make that purchase. Okay, so I'm gonna hit on a few things from a social proof side of things as we're going through here, but before I do that, I also turned to a friend of mine for some social proof and advice for this presentation, and this is one that Matt was talking on. It was ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT and OpenAI and artificial intelligence becomes a friend when you use it in a friendly manner and you ask it the right questions. So I asked this question because coming into here, I knew that I needed to go and help some folks in the roofing industry and leaders find things in technology that they can build strategic plans around. So I asked the question, what 4 things in technology should I talk about that focuses on productivity and profits in the roofing industry that leaders should be building strategic plans around? And it came back with this. So I'm gonna leave this up here for the next 10 minutes. You guys can read this. And then I'll just wrap up my presentation. But seriously, there were 4 things that came out of there. There was digital project management and workflow optimization. There was advanced roofing materials and techniques, digital marketing and online presence, and then remote collaboration and mobile technology for your field workers. So those 4 came into play. Now, when I'm going out for advice to someone, I also gotta filter that into what I know about. And I can tell you right now, I know nothing about advanced roofing materials and techniques. You guys are the ones who are the experts at that. So I'm gonna replace that with one that I do know about, which is integrations, interoperability, and this is another layer from a technology standpoint that can help get you a competitive advantage. I'm gonna skip past a few of these. That was just some more ChatGPT that came back to me, basically saying that you go and attack all 4 of these things. This is where you can start building a strategy and a plan that's gonna lead to that productivity and profits. So number 1, companies are automating their workflows. So they're finding ways to take the paper processes, the whiteboard processes, the Post-it notes that are being used around the office, the things that are getting shared through the office, And they're doing it in ways that are going and creating more productivity. And you look at businesses that are out there that we're all buying from. I talked about Amazon earlier. Amazon is doing this all the time. They're innovating so they can have a better workflow and a better customer experience, right? I don't know about you, they know when I get a package, which I usually get a ding every single day, that something's coming to my house, it lets me know that it's 3 stops away. It's a convenient factor for me. I know when to be home. I know when I need to go and check my Ring doorbell to make sure it's there. My pizza tracker, I need to know when Bill is put in my pizza and when Sherry is taking it out. I don't know why, other than the fact that I need to go show up and make sure that I'm getting my pizza on time and I'm getting that over to my family. So the same thing from an industry standpoint, when you're looking in construction, there are so many opportunities to go and look at workflows in ways that could become more efficient from a business side. So I've got some customer examples, and I wanted to share any customer that I'm sharing right now, they have given the authority for us to be able to share on their example. This is not something that we just go and blurt out things about our customers, but I think this will just give some ideas of what's going on. So Andy Egan, when they came to us, they're a mechanical contractor. They had 200 employees. They were using dry erase boards, and I'm telling you, this board is huge that they had in their office, and they would come into a conference room every single day and they'd manage their schedule, and it was on a whiteboard. And if that whiteboard was erased, the information's gone. If they didn't put the right information on there, because bad data in or bad information in is going to have a bad result in the end, right? So that's the type of challenges that they were experiencing, was what do we do with this whiteboard that we know works? Because the way we've done it has always worked, but what do we do now? And this is where we looked at really unique, creative ways to go and tackle their scheduling mechanism. And we then built out, you can see this, let me move forward here, whiteboard. We built out some blueprints and then ultimately built out screens that were on an 85-inch TV that then was just like the whiteboard. They were dragging and dropping individuals from job to job. Now the key there was understanding what was going on in the person's head who was on the whiteboard when they were crossing everything out or moving somebody's name, because they knew everybody's certifications, they knew everybody's skills, they knew their calendar, they knew their schedule, they knew everything going on. So now we took that and put that into a system that tells them the decisions ultimately that they need to make. So it took what was in that one person's head that was there and put it into a system so then it could be used by this person or this person within the organization. It created some more continuity of what it was that was going on in the company. And challenges that can happen. So when a job is happening, you all know there's certain certifications that have to be there. So if you have a certain roofing job, there might be a certain certification, maybe an OSHA certification that's there. They had ways that told them if they dragged into a job that, oh, this person's not certified in what's needed for that job. Thus, they can't actually come onto that job. So it was actually helping them make the right decisions for the job and not having to think in great depth to those types of details. Second piece that I mentioned, or ChatGPT told me to mention today, was companies want to integrate with their existing data and systems, right? So there's all this investment that's went in. Bob, you talked about it. You said dozens of software systems that you all have probably already implemented. They could be full software systems, Procore, Computery, Sage, all these different systems that are in place. Maybe there's Excel spreadsheets that are running certain processes of yours. Well, how do you actually get this data together and not lose that data and then actually take action off of the data that's there? So you have all of this. There's ways to connect the data and do different things now, which is great. So some of this is more on the technical front, but just know that what we look at is we do evaluations and strategies around data and how we can bring it together. So ultimately, you all can make decisions appropriately off of your data. So if you had certain work orders or you had certain bids out there with your clients, Those are in separate systems. There are ways, which are called application programming interfaces. There are methods for us to get within that data, and then we build what's called a data pipeline. So a data pipeline is taking your data from all these different sources, those dozens of software that you have. We bring it down into one source that can ultimately report back information. So now you know about that client, where their invoices stand. You understand also what work orders are there. You know the details related to the employees from your end, who's been working on the project, and that came from 3 or 4 different systems. There's ways to do that, which is really exciting. And we love that Microsoft, Amazon, Google, a lot of the big players are building these ways now for technology companies like ours to take advantage of these pipelines and being able to build them out. At the end, it is either like a web application or what's called Power BI. Has anybody used Power BI in the room, or an analytics software? Do you have a little bit? Okay, what are you using it for?
Dashboards.
Dashboards? What do you report back? Is it certain KPIs? Yeah, and
Don't
that's
do it well though.
Don't do it well?
No.
Okay. Have you just dabbled in it and played with it a little
Yeah,
bit?
and I just, so that's the challenge is having the time to understand how it works, to get all the data bring together so that it does what I want it to do. Because the ability's there, it just knowing how to do it is the tough part.
Yeah. Yeah, and so you're at this point where you have some data, and you have it in a place, but now you're trying to figure out the best way to leverage that data.
Right, so it's easier for me.
Yeah. What are the challenges you're facing? I guess biggest challenges you're facing right now?
Just different technology, different software is trying to get data out of all those different things to bring it together to report it. And you don't, you need to have the technical know-how how to do it, and there's code that's involved and things. But it's like it's all there, but how do you bring it all together?
Got it. Yeah, and that's huge. I mean, I think over these past 10, 15, 20 years, Bob was showing that productivity growth level of construction, and it's lagging behind, but there's still been decisions made to start storing data or start putting it in certain ways, but how do you actually figure it out and leverage it? Because it's one thing to have it stored, but it's another thing to make decisions then off of data. That's cool. Team Elmer's, we drove by, I don't know how many vehicles today here in Traverse City, but we saw a lot of Team Elmer's vehicles on the road. So we've helped this group with a lot of their manual field collection, and I'll talk about field data collection. But the piece that I wanted to hit on, is this a, yeah, all right. I got the pointer. So what they did is they came to us with some challenges, right? Was lack of data visibility. What you were just mentioning is what do we do? How do we actually connect this data? How do we make decisions off of that? And then they had these disconnected back office systems. And there were 3 of them in particular, and 2 of them I have photos right here. But it was their, it was their HR software, it was their payroll software, and then it was their safety software. So they had all 3 of these in place, but they didn't have a way to really report back that data. What they started building out first was they needed something that was going to bring them ROI, right? Because anytime you go and build a project out, you want to have a return on investment for the cost that it takes to go and build that. Well, first was in the field, they needed to go and collect their time entries, and they needed to collect very specific information that was unique to them. And then ultimately, getting over to Spectrum for payroll and processing was the goal. So they built out a system that collected the data. So this is an additional system. And then we built out an integration between that system and Spectrum. There was also an integration built between Orange HRM. So that's our HR management system. So these systems came into play. We didn't say, hey, go remove those. We said, how do we leverage those? How do we build processes that are more productive for you? And then ultimately, let's get back into the systems that are foundational for your business. And that's what we help do on the strategy front.
What do you do then in a situation where Spectrum now has an update to their software program that now integrates your API?
Yeah, so the APIs that we tap into are most all the time are built by the companies like Spectrum. So Spectrum has built an API. When they make updates to their software, they're updating their API as well. They understand that there are software developers out there like us that have to leverage this software piece, so they're not removing the capabilities that we had to be able to tap into that. And an API is really out there with just about any software that you have. With your CRM systems, anybody use HubSpot or Salesforce? What do you all use for like your CRM? Customer relationship management.
FCS.
FCS, okay. So a lot of the times what we're building off of is the API that's there. So if that's a foundational item for your business or foundational software, that piece is there. We will build off of that to be able to connect in and grab the data from there. So you have your customer information, and then if you had a work order system over here or a bidding software, we would connect that. And what you do is you connect the dots between data. So you have common data points that are valuable to each other, right? You have to have this ID over here, or this customer name, and you have to have this job number. Those being common in the systems will allow you to connect them. And then we do the dot connecting for you. You don't have to worry about that side. That's something that we support you with. Then the third side of things that was mentioned by ChatGPT was digital marketing, web presence, and what we understand, because we have a digital marketing arm, is that we compete out there with, whether it's your competition or just in the marketplace in general, for talent or business, you need to be seen or heard of or referred or however. But what we do know is that you can leverage a digital marketing strategy to go and do that. So I'm on the custom software side. We have a digital marketing arm over at Spark. So here's what I'm going to lead with is more from Forbes and what's some statistics that they have that can help give you some perspective of what's going on the web right now and how people are making decisions. 48% of people say the number one way that they decide on the credibility of a business is determined by their web design. 57% of users won't recommend a business with a poorly designed website. So I come in contact a lot with companies that will tell me, I'm in this industry, we don't need to have a website, we just need it there. We need something there because we just have to have a website because that's what everybody else has. But this right here is not saying 57% of users won't recommend a business because they don't have a website. This is saying from a poorly designed website. So this is a statistic that aligns with saying you probably want to put a little bit more emphasis and thinking into how that site is designed and what's important there. Because what you're looking at is things like this, is 47% of users won't wait longer than 2 seconds for a website to load. I don't know who's waiting even 2 seconds. I was on a website the other day that we're just starting to support, and there was an image on there that was blurry for half a second, but I noticed it, and I'm like, oh, that's what goes to my head like right away. And we were able, within that week, to solve that problem, which was great. But that's what folks are thinking. We are in the instant age now of technology. We expect everything to be there on demand. So the numbers don't lie when it comes to digital marketing either, and what can happen when you actually invest in email marketing. So when you invest, every dollar invested in email marketing can earn $36. Okay, this is Forbes, this isn't me. Investing in search engine optimization can deliver an ROI up to 700%. So search engine optimization, all that is how likely is your site going to show up on Google? Are you going to show up when somebody searches for roofing in this area? What are the things that you could do to go and help yourself show up more to that? I just had a conversation yesterday with a industry leader down in Kalamazoo about, is it really important for us to continually update our site and be providing information in like a blog-like format? And the answer is yes. If you ask my team, our digital team, what links folks come to the most at Spark Business Works, it's part of our blog and our news feed that we have. Because it's relevant information to what's going on at the time and at the moment. That's what leads folks in.
Question.
Yes.
So which is better then? Doing the blog type format, because I've heard it both ways, doing the blog type format on an active website versus being active on social media sites such as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Which is better?
Yes.
Or doing both, or one over the other?
So I think it's going to be a specific strategy to your business, right? So it depends on where your unique audience is. Our digital team goes through what's called a marketing action plan process that helps evaluate that for you. Kind of similar to what Matt was talking about, that assessment that happens on the quarterly basis for their business continuity side. That same type of assessment happens on the marketing front from our team. They'll go and assess what's going to be best for you. Now, I think it could be coupled both, but you also have to decide first off what social media outlets are the right outlets for your business, right? So maybe TikTok is the right one for you, maybe not, right? Depends upon who your audience is that you're going after. If you're going after an audience that is in a certain generation or certain, maybe all residential, maybe this, okay, well then maybe that is the right choice. Maybe it's LinkedIn, or maybe it's Facebook. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, typically it's both. But then when it comes to the blog articles and the content, is where a lot of, small businesses are just like, what am I going to write? This is
Right.
and then
that's
they
the
write
struggle,
about
right?
the wrong stuff. So
Ooh, yeah.
you can use data to say what are the trending searches for the target that you're looking for, right? So if you have your target demographic based on geography or industry, what are the trends that they're searching for? That's what you want to be writing for. And so I think having the plan around what to write for and when, and then using those other outlets to spread that information is where you get the most benefit.
So we've kind of talked about this. The website is kind of your centerpiece in terms of your digital marketing plan, right? So whether you're going on social media, things could be leading into your website. Your website could have landing pages, it could have newsfeed, blog articles. Bob, you hit a great point though, it's got to be the right content. So when we look at a real world example, we have a company down in Texas that we've supported that had some specific marketing goals around how many sales qualified leads and sales they wanted. They wanted 30 sales qualified leads and 7 sales per month based on the leads that were being brought in. And they wanted engagements that were between 2 and 4%. Engagement is just folks coming to their website and using that. So we built a strategy that worked for them. That strategy was very specific. That was what, Bob, you were talking about, the keyword phrase research, making sure that we're actually building out the content that's going to be read by Google the right way. Google has changed their algorithm and they will continue to change their algorithm, which means that that algorithm is going to tell the world what they should see. So our team goes in and makes sure that we do that research for you. The results that we saw, and this is live from the last 60 days, I had our marketing team grab this from the system that tells us this. They've actually had 56 new sales in the last 60 days, and they've had 278 SQC, sales qualified leads, and 10% more impressions and engagements. And that was based on a strategy that was specific and unique to their business. Fourth item that we have is remote collaboration, mobile technology, and field operations. That's what ChatGPT called it. I called it companies are seeking ways to connect with the field. Another company, Mall City Mechanical, they doubled in size, and they were looking for, I'm clicking the wrong button. They doubled in size, were laying on paper and pencil, off the shelf, didn't work for them, okay? They came to us with all these ideas. I'm talking a massive list. I remember being on the call, and I was like, wow. This is going to be fun. This is going to be awesome for us to go and navigate, right? Because you have to have a starting point that works for them. And these 4 areas here are where we had started. And we built a strategy then around time entry, field data collection. So there's extra data being collected in that time entry. They've got mileage, they've got different details that they needed. And then they moved into scheduling, work orders, and now they're on to the next layers here. Throughout the process, we've been reviewing on a quarterly basis with them a plan to make sure that we were updating the actual strategic plan. So it's important to continue to stop, review your objectives, make sure you're looking at what's next, what's ahead. And we actually we provided an ROI assessment to them. So we looked at about those 20 different features on there, determined which are going to bring the most ROI. They told us, here's the details that we know about return on investment, the cost of doing this type of labor in the way that we're doing it now, to the way that we need to do it in the future. And then we determined that here's the plan forward now. They connected with Computer Ease. Does anybody use Computer Ease in here? Software? Yeah, okay. Yep. So from a software side, it's important to know that not all software has the right application programming interfaces and that side. So Spark actually has navigated Computer Ease and other softwares to go and actually build out a connecting tool of the data, because there is not a fast way and a quick way to get data out of Computer Ease if you have the desktop version. Are you on the desktop side or the website, do you know?
Desktop.
Desktop? Yeah, so there's some challenges with the desktop side of being able to access that data. Well, we've actually overcome a lot of those challenges because of situations we've been in where we needed to overcome those challenges, which is great. Talked about this kind of the every 3 months, asking what's next. And then the best way to get started, it really does come down to that planning. It comes down to assessing. It comes down to digging into what's going on. It's the same as what Matt had mentioned on the business continuity side, as well as the competitive advantage. You have to plan before you begin. And that planning comes around timeline, budget, as well as what those technology options are that work uniquely for you. So the asking for feedback is such an important aspect of things. So one of our core values at Spark is being empathetic in the process of building software. What does that mean? That means actually digging down into the user's needs, the individual's needs that are actually going to use that software. So making sure that you're digging into your teams for feedback, understanding how they're using things right now, how they're using technology, how are they using their paper, their pen and pencil, what are they doing every single day in their process? That's where we focus on, let's go ask for feedback. And I have that next piece that I told you I would give you, which was, what should I be asking? These are the conversation starters. So if you all know to use the QR code on your phone, you can grab this off of here. But these are conversation starters that you can have with your team. So as you all are leaders here in the room, often what comes up is you're in unique situations where you need to go and get some feedback from somebody who's out in the field or somebody who's in a specific department within your organization. These conversations starters, which some of them are just like this, are really simple. They're nothing crazy, but because of inefficiencies in the current processes, I waste a lot of time doing blank. And this can be a very open piece for you to continue to innovate with. Yeah.
So going back to, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, you're good.
Going back to the challenges in construction and adopting technology in the field goes down to that, it comes down to that approach. So a lot of people say, how did you guys get those people in the field to adopt the technology? It's talking to them and understanding their actual needs. It's very easy to just sit in a boardroom and buy a piece of software. It's another thing to really spend the time in the field, understand the user's needs, and then tailoring it to them. And it's being that empathy in how that user uses that software. So that's kind of the secret to how to get software adopted in construction.
All right. We're just about done here with the PowerPoint. I just want to make sure to wrap up here with this. Is that hierarchy of needs, it does start with that first foundational element, which is Matt, his team, making sure that that's taken care of. The next level of things is going to be a combination of both with Matt and our team as well. And really just thinking, and it's introducing those thought leaders. My thought leader today, ChatGPT, I asked one more question too. I said, what 3 foundational technology needs need to be taken care of before we start with some of these competitive advantage items? And it came back with all 3 areas that Matt had focused on. details about your foundation. So you can take care of the foundation and then move into the competitive advantage and beyond. And that's where then you can take this to the next level for your organization. So focusing on that hierarchy of needs and really looking at, you can be right here now, but what is it that you're gonna do within your culture to set you apart, leveraging technology and being innovative in a practical way? And that's what we hope to help with. And we're more than happy to answer questions, QA. Nobody's gotten the socks yet, so. Yeah. Yes. You guys wanna come on up here for
Sure.
QA?
How accurate
Ah.
are your
He's gonna give
ROI estimates when you sit down with a new client and figure out, okay, so we think by doing X, here's an estimate on the ROI, and then you obviously track that. How accurate are those estimates, or do you usually see it increase, or is it in some cases lower than what they expect?
I'll answer and then feel free to jump in. I would say that they're very accurate in the sense that we're getting the information from the client, right? So I may ask questions like, how much time is being spent on blank this week? Okay, 4 hours a week for 3 individuals. We know there's 12 hours, and then we come with understanding what those dollar amounts are for that 12 hours that was there that we could save and bring down to 1 hour or 30 minutes. Some of the ROI could be on opportunity now available for that talent, right? So anybody facing this? Yeah.
So I think that's the big thing is a lot of these firms that are investing in this stuff aren't doing it to just save costs and stay the same size. Most of them are looking for ROI and time savings, so those team members can spend time on other initiatives, and that's kind of the big thing. So it's that kind of thought process that I've seen at all those different companies of people that say, yeah, we're going to save our accounting team 40 hours a week, and they're going to spend that time on X, or they're going to be able to handle twice as much work because we're going to grow. Instead of just how do we cut costs and just save money, it's more how do we open it up to continue to grow. I think they're pretty accurate. They usually bring the numbers.
I think that was a pretty good question.
I know, I was gonna say. That's,
What do you see, Matt, on that?
yeah, I mean, we have the exact same conversations as well on the IT infrastructure side too, because it's like, I'm gonna invest in X amount of dollars, and we have really the similar workflow. Like we will ask like, what's your yearly revenue? You know, how many employees in the organization? What's the average salary? You know, and you have something as simple as like a network, you know, type of, you know, incident that, you know, maybe it causes 2 hours of downtime, you know, for an organization that happens just 12 times a year. Well, you have like a $5 million company and the cost of an hourly downtime is $10,000. You know, 10,000 times, 24, hours, that's $240,000 right there. So taking an investment of maybe a third of that to improve that is going to be, a worthwhile investment when you look at it that way. That's a very simple example, but that goes for everything from the network infrastructure to the backup solution to the cybersecurity side of things. It's a very complex thing, but we, of course, I'm biased here, but we do a really good job of taking all of that with the organization and seeing where that is and coming up with, a plan. And most of the time with most organizations, if they invest anywhere in the realm of typically, and specifically I'm talking construction, what we're seeing is that basically on your yearly revenue, if you're investing proactively about 2 to 4% of your revenue into there, that's typically going to keep you in line and keep you active and proactive and keep you guys away from any type of potential issues. There's a lot of planning on how to invest that properly. I'm not going to get into that today, but we follow a very similar approach. So.
You guys all, I'm the oldest guy in the room here, by the way. Blow my mind. What I did in 4 days in a job is now being done in 4 hours or less.
Yeah.
So it's constantly changing. You're all on the cutting edge. Going forward, you don't even know where you're going yet.
That's true.
How do you find guys in your business to hire to get up to where you're at? You have trouble with that, don't you?
There's a skills gap. I mean, to say that, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll answer in that.
Yeah.
especially looking at the younger generation, you know, what's coming in and what they're looking for. They're looking for companies that embrace technology, to put it frankly. They come in and, go into a building, and if you got 30-year-old carpet in the building and you can see where people got a runway going through there, the likelihood of somebody of new talent that's worth coming into the business is probably not going to take a second look at you. And the same thing is true with what type of technology you're using. The use of mobile devices in the field. You guys using clipboards and pens, that type of stuff. That they are looking for that, and it's not to put it in a perspective of like, well, they just need to change their thought process. This is just how it's done. And there's a competitive advantage when it comes to that. And I think we've done a great job of showing you guys that. So really looking at and answering those questions, coming back to that empathy piece of talking with your current users and saying, hey, what are areas of improvement? What are you struggling with? And then asking people within the organization in the field that are coming into this, that are in the trades and coming up. What are some things you're expecting? What would you like to see? What are things in the technology space that really wow you? And then start having that strategic plan to say, hey, maybe we need to start incorporating some of this into our business to attract talent. So it's twofold.
Perfect deal.
Perfect deal. Yeah.
I mean, I think we're really active with the universities that are around us. We speak at a lot.
Yeah.
We've got high school interns, and you just spoke to a bunch of kids the other day. I think it's the more connected you are, we've had pretty good luck, I think. But I mean, we had interns over the summer. One intern, because we at Spark, you can work from home, you can work in the office. It's up to you. We'd like to see you in person, but we don't mandate anything. One of the interns came in every day. And there were days I was in the county office, it was just me and him. And of those interns, who do you think's getting a job? Andre, because the kid came in every single day, asked questions. I mean, so it's like if they're getting brought up the right way and they're realizing. So yeah, we see a lot of opportunity with
You guys do a great job, your presentation and everything. And it's exciting. It's an exciting world out there.
It is, yeah, it's great.
I'll add one more thing to that too, is that we talk about marketing, and this is what they're the experts on that end, is when it comes to like your website, and talking about curb appeal, is you really should consider having an employee or about like what it's like to work at your organization. We've gone as far as interviewing our employees, creating a video, like what's it like to work, like why do I work at Grit Technologies, and talking about the environment, talking about what it's like to work there, what's the culture like. All of that's very important in attracting new talent. And be able to have that on the webpage, especially if they're checking out and they're looking for work, that's going to be a really differentiating factor between you and the competitor that's out there as far as attracting new talent.
Yeah, the other piece I'll add, first off, I'm blown away when I see what you all do on the roofing side. And that's what is, when you say the thing that took, you said 4 days down to 4 hours now.
Sure.
Amazing, but the foundation needed to be there in roofing to be able to do this. So what you all do and what we get to do, we get to go and help you move that 4 hours down to 3.5 hours.
I went on the roof and measured the building physically.
Yeah.
You guys call up the satellite with your mobile.
Right.
I can't back then.
Yeah.
By the way, you should add to your presentation, make sure you have a generator first.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because nothing else works without the
Okay.
power.
We were just talking about
We were
that.
talking about that last night.
Yep. Wow. Yeah, we definitely appreciate it on the.
He was going to the bathroom when we talked about this.
Okay, there you go.
I'll wear them.
What other questions?
I just, in terms of a relationship, what's your fee structure like if, say, we called you?
Depends on the service that so I mean, I can't speak for Grit, I can speak for Spark on this side. But it depends on the service side, but everything starts with, for us, is strategy and planning. So that's a bucket of hours that we begin with to actually go and start the
Hourly
planning
rate?
process, hourly rate. Yep,
And
yep.
What's that hourly rate?
The rate goes from 175 to 195, depending on the bucket of hours that's there. Yep.
Now, do you come in and help assess with, sometimes it's hard to put into words what you need. Because there's so much information, so many different applications. We don't have the capacity to know what's out there to help us with efficiencies because there's so much data that we collect that could be useful, but we don't know how to process it and use it properly once we get it, because some things are still best done, well, I have employees that think some things are still best done just with paper. And you know, paper gets lost. It has to get transferred from one person to the next. So that's the challenge, is being able to take people that have, you know, some great skills, but not technology skills, right? And get them to embrace it, understand it, know how it's gonna make their life better, and what it can do. And so sometimes you need some people to guide you through and say, all right, this is what we can do with all this information to help it work better for you. And so that's something that you can help do, because like, we have a lot of different programs in place, but you have programs that may do it better, you know.
Yeah, that goes down to that strategy and planning session where we can do some workshops with your team. I mean, so like we're helping a GC in Florida, same thing. They have 6 or 7 processes, and they're like, we know we can do it better, but we don't. And so we're helping them just figure out where's the lowest hanging fruit. And that typically involves, what's your 5-year plan? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to double? Are you trying to stay the same and get more efficient? And so we try to take all that into account. So then when you're kind of putting that plan together, it actually aligns strategically. And there's other clients that will do, like, you know, we have a firm that wanted to mine municipal data on building permits to see what large multifamily units haven't had a permit pulled for a roof replacement in so many years, so that their sales team knew who to go contact. And so they hired us to start pulling data from all those municipalities and then get it into one section, so their business development team knows who to call. And so that's one of those, like, we know, can we do this? We're like, I don't know, let's see. And then we found out that all the counties store the data differently. But once we kind of built those pipelines, then their team could do that. We have another client that wants us to mine social media data to find out when there's a flood in an apartment complex. And so there's tools out there that will tell us where people are, you know, if they're posting information about a flood or something like that, that they know that their, you know, team can go in there and they're like a Serve Pro type company. So there's all sorts of things, but all those came with just like an idea, like, hey, how do we know when a building hasn't had a roof in 30 years? And then then we help them think. It's kind of, yeah. So that's kind of, that's more like the R&D kind of, that's when those teams are typically in that differentiator, right? They've got a lot of that other stuff figured out. Now they're trying to say, how do we really level up? Other times it's, we have 2,000 pieces of paper a week. How do we get rid of it? That's more of it's a little easier to spot.
Right.
Yeah, that's where you see time entry was a big starting point for quite a few groups, because making sure that was right, so then payroll went out and job costing was taken care of. That was a big deal.
The challenge is keeping the business to keep doing business the same way. So you don't have to change. Like if you move to a software as a service platform, you're gonna have to change how you operate, typically to fit that software. What we found in construction is every firm's a little different. So if we can find a way to have technology just mimic the way you're doing it now, like Jake, with that example of the whiteboard to the system, keeping it as close as possible, but getting the data and stuff built in there. That's how we also kind of ensure adoption, because you're not trying to teach people a different way. It's the same way of doing it, just with a different technology. I don't know if that makes sense, but the moment you disrupt how you guys operate, which has been honed over all these years, that's where you start to have a lot of risks.
Yeah.
You guys develop apps, customized apps?
Yeah, mobile apps, web apps.
Is there a way to see like a demo of some of those apps, like the scheduling one, for example?
Yeah,
Instead of just seeing pictures, can you see like an actual?
We'd be open to
presentation?
setting something up together. We can always sit down with them and talk more specific, and then we build out clickable prototypes so we can show you some of those, so you can actually see and feel what it's like.
Here's a good question. Do you have 100 qualified journeymen?
Is that something you need to find?
Okay, I'll give John 5. John is 5. I'll give Nick 5.
Ones that know how to heat well.
Sure, just give me once I show up.
Where's your company based at?
We're in Kalamazoo. We have offices in Grand Rapids as well as in Houston, Texas.
Okay, great. And then you're
For Clinton Township and also Grand Rapids area. So well, we service the entire state. Though,
Yeah, same.
so,
Same.
So everybody in this room should be using you guys. I don't think figured that out yet.
Are you working on commission for him?
They hired me to sit here.
I slipped him a 20 before we started.
I got paid fair time.
Yes.
Cool. That's awesome.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.